individuals who have what I call the complaining spirit. These are individuals that, regardless of what life gives them, they'll find a negative aspect and they'll hang on it rather than to take every thought captive and to think on the good things like God has told us to do. Unfortunately, a bad attitude is contagious as a good attitude. We learn here about the children of Israel and the many things that happened and the many times they complained and the lessons that they had to learn the hard way. This all got showed to me real quick. Sometimes when you look up scripture, when you're about to speak, your first thought is, well, what is it exactly that it is that Lord wants me to share? I didn't get past chapter 20 in Numbers before it jumped out at me like it was 3D. I'm going to bring us straight to the point because we got limited time and I don't want to take it all up. We're going to go down to where, well, I'll go ahead and start at the beginning on 20. The children of Israel, even the whole congregation, came into the wilderness of Zin in the first month, and the people stayed in Kadesh. Miriam died there and was buried there. There was no water for the congregation, and they assembled themselves together against Moses and against Aaron. First red flag. Here they are, their first encounter with hardship, and what do? They kind of start a mutiny. Verse 3, the people quarreled with Moses and spoke, saying, we wish that we'd have died with our brothers who died before the Lord. Why have you brought the Lord's assembly into this wilderness that we should die here, we and our animals? Why have you made us to come up out of Egypt to bring us in this evil place? It is no place of seed or of figs or of vines or pomegranates, neither is any water to drink. Moses and Aaron went away from the presence of this assembly to the door of the tent of meeting and fell on their faces. I'm going to stop right there. People, we have to realize, and I'm not talking about just us, but I'm talking about everywhere in life. God has placed godly leadership exactly where he chose it. And he places people to be under that leadership by his direction. It's already a huge responsibility and burden to be a boss, to be a pastor, to be a leader of any kind in this world. And a lot of the times, and I could say this from even where I work at in the natural realm, there's people there that the moment they receive a slight hint of hardship, they go off the hook and they start blaming the people that are placed in authority in that position. They don't take any responsibility for their own actions, and they don't realize how that impairs the ability of a leader to function. It grieves the Ruach HaKodesh for people to complain. It grieved Moses and Aaron. They're falling on their faces before the Lord because, number one, they loved those people. They loved Adonai. They wanted to do the right thing, and here they are with this mutiny, just coming at them because they were obeying the Lord and doing what they told them to do. Let's pick up where we left off on that. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, take the rod and assemble the congregation, you and Aaron, your brother, speak to the rock before their eyes that it pour out its water. You shall bring water to them out of the rock, so she will give the congregation and their livestock drink. Moses took the rod from before him as the Lord had commanded him. Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock, and he said to them, hear now, you rebels, shall we bring water out of this rock for you? Moses lifted his hand and struck the rod with his rod twice, and water came out abundantly, and the congregation and livestock drank. And here we see when it's unfortunate, but it happens. When you're under pressure and you're worried about how you are perceived by others, you want some kind of what's the word for that? Well, you want to be recognized. You want to be justified. You got upset and he'd been frustrated for a long time, and that frustration came out in disobedience. Instead of doing what God said and speaking to the rock, where God would have been glorified and sanctified before the people, to see that his great power was just, it was doing that. But unfortunately, Moses fell into a place where I myself and many of us have fallen into, where we've just been through so much. We're just, oh, you know. And he took the rod and he hit the rock not once, but twice. He was very frustrated. And the water came out. God still blessed the people, even though he didn't do it the right way, because that's who God is. Now, this isn't to say he didn't hold Moses accountable for that, because he didn't enter the promised land because of doing that. And you think, well, that's harsh. No, disobedience is harsh. When God gives you every single tool and resource and blessing and promise and is good to you when you don't even deserve it, and then the next thing you do is you rebel, it's as if it is as the sin of witchcraft. We cannot let ourselves fall in these two classifications of rebellion. The people rebelled against God by complaining. Complaining is the opposite of thankfulness. People, myself first, I am not good at this. I'll admit it. It says confess your faults one to another. And here I am before y'all, and I'm going to just tell you right now, I complain a lot, and I repent. I'll be complaining in traffic. I'll be complaining when things don't go my way. The moment okay, give you examples. You know, as a father and a husband, you're going to have those days when it seems like literally everything is going the opposite direction that you need it to go. Okay. My first reaction should be, Father, in the name of Yeshua, I just ask for your blessing, your favor, and your protection over the situation. I ask you to give me peace and to trust in you, because you are God. You've never let me down, and I can trust you. But instead, a lot of times it's, let me try to figure this out on my own. Let me complain about it and find somebody that'll agree with me about my complaining so I feel justified. Then you've got the frustration aspect. It's a combination of what's happening, plus you're upset at yourself because you can't fix it. And that's a form of pride. You see how this becomes this collaboration of evil after a while. The enemy's laughing at you the whole time because he started it. And now you're just going off in this tangent because you forgot the most important thing. It is about him. God will use every situation to glorify him and bring about something beautiful if you pay attention. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not a woman, but I know birth is a painful, painful process. And those women go through far more than we could ever imagine. But yet God brings a beauty out of that travail, out of that labor, out of that situation that just doesn't seem to make sense physiologically. A lot of times God is trying to birth something in us, in our lives, in our ministry. And we're so focused on complaining, we're not being thankful. If you will combat this problem with being thankful all the time, it's a lot harder to complain, because then you're looking for the blessing. You're looking for God in that. You're looking for what he's trying to do in that situation. Is he trying to teach you? I heard a minister on the radio, uh, and he was talking about something. And you know how you'll listen to something while you're doing something, and all of a sudden you just hear something, and it's like, hey, pay attention. God was using that minister at that moment. He brought something out to me I didn't think about. And it was a ministry story about a young lady who had been through a traumatic physical injury, and she was placed in a hospital, and she went on to realize that the reason she went through her moment of tragedy was so she could minister to the physician that was working on her, who received Yeshua into his heart. You're thinking, that's crazy, man. No, that's the way God works. He uses everything. The enemy tries to kill, steal, and to destroy, and God turns it 180 degrees, and he makes it into something awesome. He turns everything into a good thing. He turned my health issues into a blessing. Not only was I able to pray with my doctors, I got closer to him because I was looking at such a bad situation. I got closer to my family. I got close. I quit doing a lot of stupid stuff that I should have never been doing to begin with. There is beauty in the middle of tragedy. There is a lesson in the middle of a challenge. There is peace at the end of the stuff that's going on, but you got to look for it and you got to be willing to accept it in your heart. There's a lot of examples that I wrote down. Like, I'm going to give you this one. I wrote it all out because it really stuck out to me. Philippians chapter 2, verses 14 and 15. Again, Philippians 2:14 through 15. Do all things without murmurings and disputings, that ye may be blameless and I can't read my own word. My goodness. Harmless. There we go. The sons of God without rebuke in the midst of a crooked and perverse nation, among whom you will shine as lights to the world. You want to talk about ministering to somebody? When they see your reaction and like that, when things are going wrong and they see you still praising God and looking for the good, that'll change somebody a lot quicker. You'd be surprised how many people are watching your every word and movement. And I know I talk about those situations a lot, but let's face it, it's life and it's important. Okay. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 10. Neither murmur ye as some, and they talk about the ancient Israelites, and were destroyed by the destroyed of the destroyer. And there it shows you the enemy is out to kill God's people then and today. That's if you let him. But if you begin to understand who Adonai is, and the only way you understand that is by getting in his presence and staying in it. You also understand the adversary. You understand what the enemy's up to. You can see it farther away the more you pay attention. You start to see the pattern. Because guess what? He got the same tricks he had from the day with the serpent in the tree. He just takes different forms and through different people and situations unaware. That name that she was talking about earlier, where they were at when that rock was struck, Meribah, that means quarrel. It was literally named after the fact that they were quarreling, arguing. Oh, there's the word. You think, oh, no, arguing is just a friendly disagreement. Depends on how you go about it. You can have a discussion or a debate, but an argument has a bad connotation behind it because at this point, you're being prideful, trying to prove your side. You're trying to force and manipulate somebody to agree with your point of view based on your emotion. Whereas in a conversation, debate, or discussion, you're simply going through the facts and you are discovering together what the root of the issue is. In Numbers 11:4, God's anger burned and consumed the outskirts of the camp when people were complaining. And thank God Moses was praying. He got the fire abated. Folks, it's serious. God hates complaining. Chapter after chapter talks about it. And if he hated it that much then, he hates it that much now. And it's a lot easier for us to complain now because guess what? We got this internet. So we can get on here and be keyboard warriors and complain about everything and everybody behind the guise of a screen without a face. It ain't no better to do it that way than it is in person. And I'm not just jumping on y'all. I'm jumping on me. Like I said, I'm the chief of the sinners when it comes to complaining. You can ask my wife. I know she'll very quickly agree. She's smiling at me right now. But I am working hard and seeking the Lord to touch me in a way where when I feel that need to complain or to go on about something, that I hush up and I try to look deeper into what the situation really is. Here at the house, guess what? My AC died. And when I say died, I mean tombstone, no life. All right. It's about 1,000 degrees. You can fry an egg in the air by throwing it up. I mean, it's terrible. The dogs are even sweating. I didn't even know dogs could sweat. So my first thing is, oh my God, I got this old school air conditioner strapped to the back of the house that is probably old enough to drink. And I'm trying to find ways to fix the thing. And I'm a little bit handy, thank God, because he's given me situations to learn stuff. And I tried to get somebody out to give me a quote. And with the price that he offered, I could buy a whole nother house. So I was like, God, what are you trying to show me on this? And he calmed me down, and I went and I talked to another friend of mine that knew something about it. He sent me to a place about parts. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to have cold air. I put it in to find out it was a tinier motor than it's supposed to have. And it was kind of like have somebody, blow through a straw at you. And you're like, oh, it's a little better, but I'm still horribly miserable. So thankfully, I was able to trade this stuff in and I got the right stuff. And at a certain point, I'm going to go ahead and put it together. I tell you that ridiculous story to say this. Do you know how bad I wanted to complain and tell people and just go on about my misery and share my miserable feelings? No, I wanted to bad. But every time I felt like I was going to do that, something the Lord, like, I don't know why we always say something like we're ashamed to say it's the Lord. I, anyways, I realized the Lord was trying to say, man, just hush a second, pay attention. So at the end of this, when I get done, even for some reason, if I have to do more to it, I've already saved a boatload of money. God put me in the right place with the right people. I've got multiple people willing to help me without cost, surprisingly. I've got all these situations, and God also provided some side work that gave me money to buy the parts. So he supplied everything through the whole journey, and he's helping me to learn. It's a lesson that it takes a lifetime sometimes for people. And you know why? Because it's hard for us to get over ourselves. It's hard for us to get over that innate desire to want to be right, to have what you expect to have. Well, we gotta look past our own noses and realize that this ain't that bad. We ain't drinking dirty water out of a rusted bowl that we had to drag out of a creek through a desert plain or a harsh gorilla infested jungle, people shooting each other. We don't have to be over there right now where they're shooting rockets at each other. There's there's people homeless in the streets and ain't got nothing. They got diseases and they can't even get medical care. No matter how bad things get, it's a whole lot better than it could be. And often, if we pay attention, we'll get more of a blessing after a challenge than we will just having it easy. We become stronger. We can encourage each other. When we see a brother or a sister going through something we already been through, you can be like, hey, chill out. Let me just tell you what happened to me and how good it went. And all of a sudden, they got lifted spirits. It's a word of testimony. It defeated the enemy, didn't it? Here at Bethel Shaddai, we've seen our brothers and sisters comfort each other, pray for each other, lift each other up, show up in a time of need to be in a position of helping others, not just with money, but I'm talking about with being there in person, you know? It's a beautiful thing. And God does that. That's who he is working through his kingdom, through his people. But it doesn't just end with our group. We need to promote this. We need to lift this up. And remember, the enemy's first attack zone is right there at the house. And if it can weaken you at the house first, it'll be harder for you to do stuff by the time you make it out the door. So before he has a chance to do that to you, don't forget that it's important to remain in the presence of God, thanking him, praising him, lifting him up, reminding yourself how good you got it. Because when you start to count your blessings, Glenn, you'll appreciate this. That there's a Danny Kaye song and a Bing Crosby talking about counting your blessings instead of your sheep. Amen. And I'm telling you, it's real. When you start to say, God, thank you for the roof over my head and transportation and a good place to work and a loving spouse and loving children. Thank you for food in my stomach. Thank you for protection from the enemy. By the time you get done, you're like, man, I'm the most blessed man I know. Shalom, everybody.
Shalom.